After 2 years and more colorways and Chelsea first team players, Nike have finally released the latest generation of the Nike Mercurial series in the Superfly 10 and the Vapor 16. I've been using the boots over the last few months, so I'm going to tell you about the fit and comfort, the outsole, as well as the touch on the ball in my performance review. So as usual, I'm going to start off with the tech of the boot itself. So from the previous model, there's been a few changes. So mainly the big one is the upper. So we used to have Vapor Plus now. Nike have now replaced the forefoot, and we now have grip knit, which is used on the GX series. But the grip knit that's used on the Superfly 10 here is a bit different. It's not as like gritty or rough. This is a bit more smoother and waxy, but in terms of like kind of grip on the ball, you will feel it. And then in the heel to the kind of mid section of the boot, you could say Nike have introduced what they call Atom Knit. So Atom Knit is not necessarily new in terms of technology for Nike, but it's new on football boots. So Atom Knit is just like a more thinner, more breathable version of Fly Knit. And I guess that's to help with that kind of overall comfort of the boot itself. Apart from that, you still have your Fly Knit dynamic collar and tongue area. But if we look at the sole plate, that's where we see another big change. So Nike have gotten rid of their tri-stud system and have now replaced it with this kind of chevron shaped studs, which is more custom to the Mercurial series, as well as this kind of wave pattern, which is supposed to help get more out of the air zoom, which is carried onto this model of the Mercurial as well. But let's talk more about the fit of the boots themselves. So in the forefoot, there's pretty much little to no space. On the instep, the boot does wrap around your foot, but it's not super tight, and there is a little bit of like stretch to it. So if you have wide feet, these might be okay for you. And similarly on the lateral side, it's snug, but it's not too compressive or too tight. And even in the heel, it feels snug and secure and not too tight. It doesn't grip too much, and I don't think I'll get any blisters with this. And in terms of comfort, they're pretty comfortable. They require little to no breaking time as well. And on top of that, if I could describe how they feel on feet, it's like you're wearing running shoes with studs. Now, if you're wondering what size to get, I would recommend getting your normal Nike size. I usually wear UK 9.5 in Nike, and these fit me perfectly fine. Do bear in mind that this sizing recommendation is based on my foot shape, and I would say my feet are on the slim to narrow side with a low arch, so do bear that in mind when you select your own size. As we all have different foot shapes, so it might fit differently on your feet. So let's talk about the outsole. Like I mentioned before, it uses chevron-shaped studs and the air zoom unit that we saw in the previous generation. Performance-wise, I have no real complaints when it comes to the sole plate itself. It's pretty much what you'd expect from a Mercurial. It's aggressive, it's responsive, but I wouldn't want to speak to the responsiveness. It's not like a snappy responsiveness, it's more like a bouncy responsiveness, which is good actually. It's not as like harsh on your foot sometimes like we should get with a stiffer sole plate compared to this one. This is a lot more, I guess that's the cushioning air zoom unit for you. But yeah, you feel a lot softer on your feet because of the air zoom unit, I guess. But in terms of the wave pattern actually helping you get more of the air zoom in, I can't really speak to that. I don't really feel a difference compared to this one as opposed to the previous model. Overall, the outsole does what it's supposed to do. The traction is good. The responsiveness, like I said, is good. If you're thinking about using these on AG, I would not recommend it. Well, if you want to use the FG on AG, of course, don't use that. I'd recommend using the AG sole plate on artificial grass rather than this one. I think this one's a bit too aggressive for AG surfaces. Now, when it comes to the touch on the ball, this is where the new grip knit upper kind of comes in. So me personally, I'm a big fan of grip knit on the Phantom GX series, and on this one is just as good. It's not as aggressive in terms of traction on the ball, but like you still get a very good grippy touch on the ball. And because of how thin the upper is, it's still quite barefoot as well. Every touch on the ball feels like very responsive. When you're passing, dribbling, shooting, whatever it is, like the touch on the ball is like a dream. And don't worry, the grippiness of the upper isn't to the extent where you're falling over the ball. It's still somewhat minimalistic, but you do feel the grip there. Now, would I say there's a big difference between the grip knit on these as opposed to the Vapor Plus we saw on the previous model? I wouldn't say there's a massive difference. I'd say the grip knit is obviously a bit more grippy, but it's not to the extent that's gonna like change your life. Do you know what I mean? The touch is still, there's grippiness to it, but it's still somewhat barefoot and minimalistic. But again, it depends on your kind of preference, whether you like that grippy sensation on the ball or not. But overall, I'm quite happy with it myself. Now, my final thoughts about the Superfly 10, I'd say that, like I said before, it's like a running shoe with studs. And that is a compliment. It's got very good things about it. The grip knit upper, very good touch on the ball, very responsive touch on the ball. Outsole is very responsive, very good traction. Like, The boot is like overall good. Is it a massive upgrade on the previous model? I guess it's more of a personal preference thing, whether you like that extra grippy touch on the ball or whether you don't. For me, I kind of prefer it. So for me, it's somewhat of an upgrade. Comfort-wise, incredible. But in terms of comfort, I think the one thing I would have a gripe with it is the lockdown. Like, the lockdown is not terrible at all. It's still quite decent, but it's not that kind of snug wrap around your foot feeling that you sometimes get with previous Mercurial models. And I think Nike have done this on purpose, such that because when you get that like really tight lockdown, it really comes at the consequence of people with wider feet. So those boots which have like really tight wraps tend to fit only narrower feet. I think Nike tried to make the Mercurial more accommodating for people of all foot types. So there is a slight loss on lockdown, but still overall it's still good, but not as like Formula One race car lockdown as you'd expect from previous Mercurial models. And that's been it for my review, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, please leave a like. Let me know your thoughts on the boot, whether you have them or not, or if you plan to get them. If you have any more questions, leave them in the comment section down below. Follow me on all my socials. And like always, my name is Sub. This has been Substance Civil. Thank you for watching. See you.